ever felt like your awakening is more of like a breakdown rather than a breakthrough? Let me tell you, you are not alone. Why does something so sacred feel so incredibly brutal? You see, what neuroscience also tells us about awakening is that it disrupts the neural pathways and it rewires the brain as well. And that deep transformation requires often also the death of old identities. And that awakening, it also forces you to release a lot of stagnant, almost like old energy as well from the past, and so many other programs and energetic imprints that's also holding a lot of outdated beliefs. In other words, awakening isn't just a shift in perspective, it's a complete nervous system, neurological, energetic reset. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm thrilled to have you here with me for today's episode. My name is Evette Rose. And also remember to subscribe here to my channel. Join me also for our weekly masterclasses that is completely free at matmasterclass.com. Now, let's get back to our episode. Let's break down why spiritual awakening is painful and how you can start to navigate it without losing yourself in the process. Number one, the brain actually struggles with transformation. And that is also why awakening feels almost like an identity crisis. You see, your brain's designed to seek predictability. And awakening, God, it disrupts everything. Everything. Everything familiar that's now sending to your nervous system into complete panic mode because it cannot access these old familiar ways of being, surviving, and living. Now, what also happens in the brain during your awakening? You see, we have the amygdala activation. So that's our fear center of the brain, and that fires up. And it's sensing the loss of your old identity actually as a threat. Then also our prefrontal cortex, right? That becomes also a little bit overloaded because that's your logical brain and it's struggling to process all these new insights, leading to like that mental fog, right? Feeling almost a little bit disorientated. Then we also have a dopamine reset. Now, this is when all things that once brought pleasure no longer really feel satisfying. And this can actually lead to a little bit of a feeling like there's an inner crisis. You see, this is why awakening feels almost like a death, because it is a death of your old neural patterns and also your identity. Now, how do we move through it? You see, we can remind ourselves that confusion is normal during these processes. Your brain is actually adjusting to a new way of thinking. Ground yourself also in the present moment. Go walk barefoot on the sand, the grass, touch different textures as well. Hold something, that's cold or warm, or you can also focus on your breath. And another one that I also like is to write down your fears. Putting them on paper actually helps the prefrontal cortex process them more logically. The prefrontal cortex actually likes structure, and that brings structure. Remember also this death that you're going through, you are also experiencing almost like your ego that was attached to this old trauma and this old way of being. Your ego is dissolving so that your higher self, your more true, authentic sense of self can really start to come forward. Another point also that is happening when you go through these awakenings is your nervous system. Look, it becomes a little bit overwhelmed because the body's reaction to spiritual upgrades, it's very real because awakening activates the nervous system. And that often is putting the body into that state of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn as well. Now let's have a look at signs when the nervous system is in overload during an awakening. So you might start to experience a sudden anxiety, sudden panic attacks. You might struggle with insomnia or maybe a lot of intense, bizarre fatigue. You might also feel a little bit disconnected from reality. It's almost like derealization. and emotional waves that feel a little bit, might make you feel like you're a little bit out of your depth every so often. And this is actually your body's way of trying to keep up with your expanding consciousness as well. Now, how do we soothe the nervous system during this awakening? You see, we can use, for example, bilateral stimulation with the combined processes to help heal, which is a healing technique that I developed called meta psychology coaching. You can also, for example, do cold plunges, you can do yoga, you can do humming, you can do chanting. All this helps to actually regulate the vagus nerve. And also, limit stimulants, right? Caffeine, alcohol, excessive screen time, all of this can really worsen your symptoms. Your nervous system is already hyperactive. You don't need it to be more hyperactive. Now, during this process, you're going to have moments where you feel like you are like emotionally purging, right? So the shadow self can sometimes start to come up during these moments. And this awakening brings a lot of repressed emotions and sometimes trauma to the surface as well. And the reason why it can feel so painful is that the subconscious mind has actually stored unprocessed pain for years. You see, awakening forces you to face it. And old belief systems and conditioning, it really starts breaking down, making you feel more ungrounded and lost as well. Now, awakening also reveals the illusions you once lived by. And this can be heartbreaking. So you see, navigating this emotional purge, now that's another story. And the way that you can do that is to allow your emotions to move through you instead of invalidating it. How you feel is valid. I mean, it's there, you feel it. And it's important to just let it run through you. Sometimes you might feel like you need to cry, scream into a pillow, journal. But the important part is just don't suppress it. Because that inner child also needs to be held. That inner child also needs to be heard. And what you can do to ask yourself is, what old wounds are surfacing right now? So you see, you can view this pain as a learning experience, and each emotional wave is showing you what needs to be healed. So in a way, also, this is not bad. It feels bad, but it actually gives you direction and guidance. So maybe starting to reframe when you have these upsetting moments, reframe it. Okay, here's what needs to happen next. Instead of feeling angry or confused by it, it's actually giving you direction. Another point also, something that I personally went through when I went through my spiritual and healing awakening and letting go of my past, was isolation and loneliness. Because what happens is that your energy, it no longer matches your old life. And your energetic frequency is going to shift during your awakening, often making you feel like you just no longer belong. Have you been there? See, so why you feel lonely during awakening is because maybe, I mean, for me, I outgrew friends, jobs, relationships that just no longer align with your new sense of self. Your identity starts to dissolve and is leaving you in a void of not knowing who you are anymore. You see, you start to see through all these societal illusions, which can now also make the world feel almost quite fake. It feels almost sometimes a little bit meaningless. Now, how do we find comfort in that void? You see, accept that this phase, it's necessary because you are now in a cocoon of preparation for rebirth. So go out and seek spiritual communities or mentors. Surround yourself with people who actually understand your transformation. Reconnect with nature because it holds the frequency of peace and stability. When you walk in nature, it's like your soul is getting a cleanse and a bath. It's a really beautiful experience. And I'm sure you've experienced that when you do go for hikes or walk through the forest. So when you start to heal and the more you start to awaken, your reality begins to shift. And you'll see that your manifestations, they're going to speed up, because what's happening is that your reticular activating system, your RAS, and if you're one of my meta psychology coaching students, you know exactly what I'm talking about right now. So remember, this filters our reality based on our beliefs. So when you awaken, your RAS shifts and is changing what you perceive as well. And the reason also then why reality feels unstable is because synchronicities and these strange glitches starts appearing. Time starts to feel quite distorted. Days move too fast or sometimes it's too slow. And old manifestations dissolve, making you feel like you're a little bit in a void. But here is how you can stay grounded in a shifting reality. Number one, I know this is hard. Trust the process. Because what is leaving your life, it's meant to go. And practice presence. Your mind is expanding, but your body, it needs to stay grounded. And what you can do is to use visualization techniques to really start to anchor your desired outcomes. Because you're moving into this quantum manifestation mode, and your thoughts are going to start to create and realize a lot faster. And if you're going through these trauma phases and stages and transformations and you want to learn more, you can also grab your book, Trauma Decoded. This is going to be a really good start for you. And you can grab your copy at evettebooks.com, or you can grab your Kindle as well. It'll give you quite a nice insight how to start to understand trauma, the triggers, and just how do we navigate through all of this through understanding trauma. Because awakening is not a breakdown, it's a rebirth. And spiritual awakening, it isn't painful because something is wrong. It's painful because your brain is rewiring, your nervous system is recalibrating, your energy field is purging this dense negative energy as well. And your old self is dying so that your higher self can start to come forward. So, what if this pain is actually the greatest transformation of your life, even though it doesn't feel that way right now? And how to move through spiritual awakening with more ease. Remember, we talked about it. Ground yourself daily. Work on the resistance that you're feeling by letting go of resisting the resistance, number one. Notice how when you let that resistance run through you, notice how more graceful the process might actually start to feel. Find also a support system. Journal if you need to. Use sound healing. Use healing techniques. You can use meta psychology coaching. You can use any other healing modality that resonates with you. But use something that brings you peace. And remember, awakening isn't about reaching perfection. It's really about shedding those illusions and then really starting to step into who you were really meant to be. So remember, drop a comment now. What part of your awakening has been the hardest and how did you navigate your way around that? Let's support each other. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your love, your time, and your energy. I love you guys. And until next time, be the light that you are. And remember, if you want to learn more about stored emotions in the body and how they can even be hiding behind ailments, tension, pain, negative thoughts, beliefs, any challenges that you're having in your body, there's going to be stored messages. So remember to go grab your copy of Metaphysical Anatomy. It's a big book of 722 medical ailments and then the emotions that are suppressed behind them as well. You'll be also finding powerful questions in this book that can really truly help you to get started on your healing journey. And you can find your copy at evettebooks.com.